Hi everyone, here's the Book Chemist once again, and in a few short weeks, on Valentine's Day I think, if you are in America, George Saunders' Lincoln in the Bardo will actually hit the bookstores, and if you check the Amazon page of that novel, everyone in the world is currently busy praising it and saying how amazing it is. There's Jennifer Egan, there's Thomas fucking Pynchon, there's Hunod Diaz, there's Zadie Smith, all busy, Jonathan Franzen, everyone's busy telling the world how dope that novel is. If Michael Chabon were there, that would literally be the best in human literature, busy, well, in American literature I guess, busy telling the world you should read Lincoln in the Bardo. I will review that novel in a few weeks, around the 25th of February. In the meanwhile, what I'd like to do is give you an overview about George Saunders' fictional production. I have read some of Saunders' books and short stories in the past, and in the next few weeks I'd like to check out those collections of his I still have to read. I probably won't be able to review 10th of December before Lincoln in the Bardo, but we'll see. Today I'm beginning by reviewing CivilWarLand in Bad Decline, a very accurate and appropriate title for this collection. This CivilWarLand is both an actual Civil War based theme park in one of the stories in the collection, and it is of course a metaphor for America. Maybe the key theme in George Saunders' production, as far as I get it, is the contemporary derives in American society that has turned sinisterly attracted and addicted to entertainment, to advertisement, consumerism, and all kinds of silly shit that look innocuous at first, but then turn, as I said, quite sinister. And one of the brilliant things about Saunders' short stories, definitely one of the brilliant things of these short stories, is that at times it's kind of difficult to understand whether these are science fiction or dystopic short stories, or they are actually based in some place that might actually exist in today's America. Sometimes it talks about the addictive powers of holographic joyrides, sometimes it talks about the problems of young gangs terrorizing the tourists of a certain theme park, but usually the times in which he talks about the most sinister and unreal, like impossible attractions and futuristic stuff are the times in which his discussions and his points are closer to home, actually, where he talks about, for instance, the way corporations treat their employers as commodities, as objects, the way apparently joyful and friendly environments hide all kinds of tensions and vendettas and evil shit going on between colleagues. These are often bleak reflections on the contemporary state of things, of human relationships in America, maybe in the Western world in general, but there's always, well, not always, not at all, but often in these stories, there's that sparkle of hope there, that shining light that saves this whole collection from being extremely bleak and extremely negative and depressing, and turns some of these stories, only a few, but some key stories in the collection, turns them into very uplifting and beautiful and illuminating pieces. But there's also lots of bleakness, lots of it. It's kind of a disturbing book, and the first half of it is made of very short stories. The second half of it is made of a dystopic novella set in kind of a science fictional future where mutants walk the land and they are treated like shit. It's a very bad future because parts of it call to mind the contemporary situation in the Western world, and that sucks balls. Overall, it's a disturbing experience, but I won't spoil you much about it, but it's one of the best pieces in the collection. It's very fast, and you know, one of the things people usually say about the fiction of Alice Munro, Canadian short story writer, that's that her stories read like novels, even when they are just a few pages long. She can pack the whole complexity of character and the whole, well, not really complexity of plot, but the whole thematic scope of a novel inside a short story. George Saunders does the same, but adds the plot too. His short stories, that's a great thing, always have a plot, and 99% of the time also have a resolution. That's great, and by itself it makes him a savior in the world of contemporary American short stories. He can pack the same kind of complexity in the span of a few pages, and occasionally within 3 pages one character has all sorts of personal evolutions, but you never get lost. He always is always very good at guiding you throughout his stories. Because of its openness, because of its sincerity, because of the very direct way it talks about issues such as depression and self-doubt and the sinister side of entertainment, this is a collection. And George Saunders' fiction in general, I think, appeals a lot and should appeal a lot to David Foster Wallace's fans. Their themes and the way they handle irony and sincerity are very similar, and in several pieces I believe they write in a very similar way. I kinda grew past my David Foster Wallace phase a few years ago, but even when I loved Infinite Jest to bits, I never really was that much of a fan of David Foster Wallace's short fiction. I have friends, better readers than me, who are, so it's not like they objectively suck or anything of the sort. I do believe George Saunders has one thing Wallace doesn't have in his short stories, which is, as I mentioned before, completion. These short stories usually have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Most of David Foster Wallace's don't. Another writer that this collection reminded me a lot of is Junot Diaz. I recently read and reviewed his short story collections, which show the same kind of openness you find in here, the same kind of very dark humor, and also the same ability to turn a few basic narrative concerns and a few basic narratives actually into a potentially endless number of stories. Still, the one writer I'd associate with George Saunders the most, the one writer I believe Saunders is the heir of, is Robert Sheckley, master of Golden Age science fiction, one of the best science fiction writers as far as short stories are concerned. He had the same way of dealing with contemporary society and its absurdities and its issues through even more absurd stories and settings and quirks. Some of his short stories, The Monsters is one of the most famous, have this same kind of defamiliarizing power, and he did that thing in which he showed you a future America or a future dystopic society in which entertainment, for instance, or theme parks had reached new and terrible heights. And by doing that, he showed you how most of the stuff, or at least some of the stuff we do nowadays, is messed up and shouldn't exist. I've been talking a long time about a very short book. Do I believe CivilWarLand to be perfect? I don't. The novella in its second half, Bounty, has some issues with exposition, some cases of very badly handled exposition in there, and the stories in its first half kinda look samey at times because they kinda all deal with pretty much the same settings and themes, and the first and third short story in this collection are really the same short story with a few different elements turned around. Most notably though, everyone's a fan of sincerity, everyone's a fan of openness, but here that kinda reaches the level of melodrama at times, and you have all these stories with people who did some horrible thing in the past but it wasn't their fault, and now everyone hates them and their wives hate them and they cheat on them with their best friends or with that one guy they hate, and they hate themselves more than everyone, and they are still so good inside and so sincere, and the world hates them because they are so pure. But no, they are not pure, they have bad thoughts too, everything sucks. I mean, it reaches that kind of Jonathan Safran Foer autistic kid who gets bullied at school and whose dad died in 9/11. You are trying too hard kind of tear-jerking effect. I probably sound like an asshole saying things like this, but I do believe there's such a thing as too much sincerity, and this collection is a bit too sincere at times. I'm sure it's just because it's an early effort by Saunders, and what I've read of his later production, for instance in Persuasion Nation, doesn't show the same kind of thing. It's a very sincere production at times, and it has very emotional short stories, but the whole thing is kept much more under control, let's say. So I would absolutely recommend CivilWarLand. It's an excellent collection. If you are a fan of science fiction or dystopia, this is definitely a must read. If you're interested in fiction that doesn't give a shit about genres, that's a great thing. Do read this collection. If in general you're interested in some of the best American short stories the world has to offer, do check out George Saunders in general. I'll try and tell you a little bit more about the rest of his production in the next few weeks. And we'll discuss Lincoln in the Bardo together at the end of February and see if it's as dope as everyone says it is. Thank you as always for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.